Welcome back, and we are live from the Lakehouse here at Data and AI Summit in the wonderful Moscone Center. We have a fantastic day lined up for you in between all of the talks that you're seeing, and we've got some fantastic guests, and our next guest is no exception. We have the absolutely wonderful Zack Wilson, who is here from DataExpert.io. Zack, happy to be here. We are so happy to have you. First of all, wonderful jumper. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. I love it. Probably can't steal it, but never mind. How's the week been for you so far?
It's been wonderful. The energy here is really exciting, and just seeing all the new AI stuff and all the stuff that's coming in the industry and all the innovators and builders here, it's electric.
So for both of the people at home that don't know who you are, in terms of the work that you're doing, you've got a very kind of prestigious data engineering background, and you spend a lot of your time at the moment, working with people who are trying to upskill at the moment. First of all, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a founder of a company called Data Expert. We teach people data engineering, just all the skills that you need to become like a really good data engineer, like data modeling, Spark, Airflow, Flink, all the hot technologies right now, and Iceberg, all those really hot technologies. And yeah, it's like a 6-week program. It's great.
Awesome. I mean, so data engineering has kind of been through the ringer, I'd say, over the last 6 to 9 months. I think there was a moment where kind of AI came out and people thought, oh no, data engineers, they're not useful anymore. But actually, I think we're starting to see the complete reverse of this. I mean, what have you seen in terms of trends?
Oh, definitely. Just because of all the innovations that have been happening with Devin, ChatGPT, all these things that are just coming out, it's one of the things that I think people miss is you can do a very flashy demo, but then that last 20%, you can get 80% of the way there, but getting that last 20% with AI, very difficult, and you still need that expertise to take it the full way. And so definitely, but now things are shifting, right? Because people are like, what about LLMs are hallucinating all the time? We need to care about data quality, right? We need to care about, and it's oh, who's good at data quality? Data engineers, right?
And also the staggering amounts of data that you need. And it's also in kind of a funny format half the time. It's a lot of strings, which, data engineering hasn't really been that string focused up until now. And so there's a bit of a shift there. But again, yeah, just the sheer quantity of data. And Kobie has a background from Mosaic, so you've got a good understanding of how hard the data engineering pieces can be.
Yeah, no doubt. Especially when people look at these projects, just scoping them, right? Just saying what do we need to expect to do, and how much do we expect, how much time we need to put into these things. It's the case that an LLM is a great thing to train or fine tune. And any machine learning project, people get this idea okay, well, let's focus on this interesting thing. The model is so new, all this stuff, that novelty gets people so excited. But you still spend 90% of your effort and time on getting the data right and making sure that you have the quality of data that you need. So I think it's such an important thing for people to remember. Don't lose sight of the value and the importance of this work.
Yeah, and I think also don't get sidetracked. You want it when you're building an LLM, you got to be thinking about why, right? What is the purpose behind it? There should be a very clear business use case for it too, and not just oh, we need to collect all the data and then because I feel that's the thing is people think collect data, do machine learning, profit, right? They think it's a 3-step process, right? Which is it's a little more. There's a little bit more in that. You need to have a little more planning than that, right?
Yeah, especially things like data quality as well. Kind of what is a good data set? And you can't define that up front without having the context of what it is you want to do with this thing.
Mm-hmm. And especially now with LLM being it's not rows and columns now. It's hey, here's a blob of text, and it's how do you determine if that blob of text is high quality or not? And it's usually that is done, at least in the last little bit when I've been diving in it, it's done with other models, right? You feed that into another model to say okay, is this text high quality? And then that kind of gives you a result. And then, so I really think that that's one of the things that's going to happen in data engineering is data engineers are going to leverage a lot more models to kind of dance between the unstructured space and the structured space. Mm-hmm. So they get those nice labels, or they have unstructured data to get more labels, and then that kind of feeds into something else to guarantee quality. And I think that's going to be definitely a trend that we're going to see over the next couple of years.
So maybe taking a data engineer starting out today versus maybe 2 years ago, what are the obviously we've talked a lot about AI, but in terms of specific tools and techniques, what are the things that you've seen have a real shift over the last 2 years with this AI trend?
That's a good question. I know for sure that like there is a lot of that hasn't shifted quite as much as like I would have thought actually, like because I at least like with the data expert people, you know, I've put over 200 people in jobs over the last year and like got them hired for data engineering, and guess what? They were not asked a single question about a vector database. They were not asked a single question about LLM, right? They were asked about data modeling, Spark, distributed compute, the fundamentals, right? And that stuff is still gonna be the meat and potatoes of stuff, right? And there's still gonna be like, the thing that's shifting a little bit is like, okay, like semantic search, vector database. There are things like that are like starting to pop up a little bit more. And I think that's where, and then I think another area that's really close is like using like AI for like data quality checks. Because I think that's a space that's very ripe for innovation, right? And for sure, but like I haven't seen those like really be asked in interviews yet though, so.
Oh, interesting. So in terms of kind of coaching people generally, like what kind of things are you suggesting that they, you know, come prepared with?
Whenever I'm coaching people, I always talk about how the number one thing that data engineers do is they make high quality data. So what is the most important skill set there? It's data modeling. Data modeling is actually number one, and then it's like, then you go up one layer from there because it's like, how do you produce that data? And that's gonna be Spark, mostly Spark.
Yep.
Spark and maybe BigQuery and other kind of options, but like mostly Spark. And then like, so you gotta get that pipeline piece and the data piece. If you got those two, then you're there. Well, besides like communication, right? Communication, I also think that's one of the areas that data engineers need to do a better job at. And that's like, I definitely cover that as well.
Yeah.
You know, when you've been talking about how your course works and what you're doing with the people at Data Expert, you know, I'm curious, what are you seeing from the people who are in the market right now, who are shopping and stuff like this? Do they, like when they're looking for a job or when they're looking for like, what do I need to learn next? Like, how do those conversations go in terms of like when they come to you? Do they already know I really want to do data engineering? Or are they like, well, how do I get in? And they're just like kind of open-ended.
Yeah, so my bootcamp's targeted for people who already have experience. So my bootcamp's meant for people who have like 2 to 3 years of experience and they're trying to go from mid-level to senior. So like, but obviously there's people who take it like across the board, like who, like, I'll let anyone who wants to take it, but like, I definitely find that like, it's a hard market right now. The market's also really difficult. It's one of the things that I've noticed that like is challenging right now, where it's like, you have to definitely apply and interview more to get a role right now than, especially like, I felt very lucky, you know, getting in 10 years ago when it was like, oh, you've heard of Spark, okay, you're in. All right, and that, like, but now it's like you have to know like all that and data structures and algorithms, and like the interview processes are way more rigorous now, right, than they were 10 years ago, for sure.
Right on.
So in terms of people learning, I mean, do you think, we talked about kind of data engineering for AI projects, but in terms of people using AI to help their own development, have you seen any kind of creative uses here?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually do a course called LLM-driven data engineering. I have like 2 or 3 hours on that. It's actually completely open, and to anyone who wants to, it's free. And so like, I've noticed that like using it for like the structure of your pipelines and the boilerplate of your pipelines to like just get that like starting canvas is great, but it doesn't do a good job at giving you like all the details. So it's like, if you're like, I want to get an Airflow DAG, you can do an Airflow DAG, but it won't give you like the Airflow DAG and all the SQL. The SQL is going to have like, it's going to be like, it's close. It can be really close sometimes, but it's not like, but it's just wrong enough that it's like annoying, and it's actually easier to like write it yourself than to debug it, right?
Oh, interesting. I mean, in terms of like, personally, I have a Perplexity IO license. I just understanding concepts using an LLM. I don't have to, you know, harass my coworkers with all of my silly questions. I don't have a computer science background, so I'm like, oh, what is a JVM? What does this thing mean? Why is everyone getting, you know, in a fuss about these things? I mean, do you see a lot of that as well?
Yeah, I think that like self-paced learning and like personalized learning plans and all that stuff that LLM can give you already. It's like, if you ask it, give me a learning plan to learn Spark, it will give you like, very good. It's very good. It's like too good, right? And so like definitely, like it's one of those things as an educator, it makes me a little scared, for sure. But like for sure, that's like there's a lot of future in that space as well, like using it to like be faster at development and to aid in just like knowledge acquisition, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, that's been absolutely wonderful. We're so glad that we've had you here today. If people want to learn more about what it is that you do, where can they find you?
I think the easiest one is find me on YouTube, Data with Zack. That's my YouTube channel.
Okay, Data with Zack. All right then. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic.
Awesome. All right, up next, we have another wonderful guest, but I'm going to let Kobie introduce them because I think you know them a little bit better.
This is Craig Wiley, Senior Director, yes, of Product Management at Databricks here. And I've had a great pleasure of getting to meet him a little bit as we've gotten on board and working with the company, because he's been taking care of a lot of the things in the AI space. So Craig, tell us a little bit about what it's been like for the Mosaic team to be absorbed and how it fit into your team's organizational
it's been amazing. I mean, I think we were excited with the acquisition, but we had no idea the kind of synergy that would be created with the two groups. I think bringing together Databricks kind of world-class kind of data manipulation and capabilities and pre-processing capabilities, tools that I think a lot of the companies who are building these kind of foundational models need every day, and then getting to marry that with what is really the world-class stack for training these models has been just a real win for our customers in a lot of ways.
Yeah, fantastic. It's been really fun to experience. I'm curious, if you don't mind, I was curious if you wanted to share with everybody, where do you see like the line between, Databricks for customers in terms of like AI model training and things like that, Databricks for customers, versus Databricks on Databricks, which ends up being like now the AI features infused into the product, and do you work on how do you share that out with your team?
Absolutely. I think we're really lucky, to be honest, at Databricks, because while we are seeking to build kind of the world-class tool chain for these capabilities for building your own agents and compound AI systems, we have with us across the organization numerous teams who are building these systems and building extraordinarily kind of complex versions of these systems with things like the Databricks Assistant and the AI BI announcements and things. Getting to serve those teams and getting to that kind of real-time feedback on how we can improve our tools, such that our customers have access to tools that they know have already built some of these world-class AI implementations. And so it's really a huge win, I think, for our customers that we have that kind of super tight feedback cycle with them.
Yeah, no doubt. We really are like customer zero for a lot of what we do. And that absolutely means that our customers get the benefit of that. It's really fantastic. How does open source end up playing into this space? Like, especially like when we talk about open models, like when we open a DBRX and all those kind of things, how are we going to look at the open source interaction and what that does for what our customers can do and how that works?
Yeah, I mean, it's a confusing time these days, right? I mean, it used to be that like all the models came off an open source framework, maybe PyTorch, TensorFlow or XGBoost or scikit-learn or something, and then you trained your own version of them. But now, in this kind of new world order, we have models I might download directly and I might fine tune, or I might just use vanilla off of Hugging Face. And then we obviously have the API, the kind of API providers that are providing kind of these super models behind APIs. But I think what we've seen time and again is that it can be really useful to develop on some of these ultra large models and get a sense of, hey, how is this problem going to get solved? And then once you figure that out, once that train of thought has been identified, the ability to, at that point, kind of break that chain of thought down into each of the discrete steps and really examine whether or not, hey, is this best suited by a kind of giant monolithic, prompt going to a single model, or would I be better off stacking 4 or 5 smaller, maybe some fine-tuned models, maybe some, maybe a large model, maybe a code writing model, all in a chain. If I think back to the keynote yesterday and FactSet, FactSet, their success, they started with big monolithic model with a giant RAG, kind of prompt, and then ultimately they found they could, at a much higher level of accuracy, with a whole lot less latency, they could solve this problem using 4 or 5 models to break the problem down and have these models running really efficiently instead of trying to swallow a 2,500 token prompt or something like that.
That's really interesting. I mean, could you give people at home, if they are using a big model, like what are the kind of warning signs that maybe a big model isn't quite working for them and they need to try another approach with smaller compound models?
I think it's really it's a matter of exploration. I think one of the challenges we've had with the launch of Gen AI is that folks imagined that, hey, it's so easy for me to submit a prompt and get a response that maybe all of it should be that easy. And I hope that in the fullness of time it all will be that easy. But if what you're doing is seeking to build a really kind of sophisticated agent, an agent that can go do things that traditional machine learning and AI were unable to do, then going and testing and learning and kind of experimenting and saying, hey, if I did break this problem down into 3 or 4 steps, could a 7 billion parameter model be good enough, or would I need a 30 billion parameter model, or do I need to stick with kind of the larger SAS model in that case?
Yeah, that's always a great question to be asking, and I love the part that people often overlook, which is that latency part. Until you're actually trying to deliver the application experience and you realize just how much time you find yourselves waiting for the response, especially when it becomes multi-stage or complex, those are always really big things. So that latency becomes a big element.
It is, with our new agent evaluation system, not only do we help you kind of debug each step of that agent or each step of that compound AI system, we give you the latency at each step. So you can sit there and say, hey, I'm seeing 25 seconds of latency, 7 of them are in this one step. What can I do? Let's start there as we try and debug this, right? And I think, as we are able to give more kind of visibility and transparency into these tools, then all of a sudden our engineers and our data scientists will have a lot more capabilities to be able to go and kind of tweak these models to make them what they need them to be.
Yeah, fantastic. Hey, Craig, so anything you can tell us about the roadmap, things we should be looking out for in some of these compound AI systems, especially with the agent framework and with the agent evaluation?
I mean, the way I think about it is that, I kind of break up our time since this whole Gen AI revolution started into 3 buckets. The first is we all went crazy and just started doing prompt engineering and prompt tuning and all these kinds of things. And then we started really doing RAG, which was, it's just a bigger prompt at some level, right? And so we were all kind of doing this massive prompt packing and all these kinds of things. And then there was a moment, maybe 6 months or a year ago, where folks started saying, hey, what if we fine-tuned models? What if we, instead of thinking that the only hyperparameter here, what if instead of it just being the prompt, what if we actually go in and mess with the model a little bit? So we started seeing that with tuning, and I think now we're in this 3rd phase of really the agentic phase, or the compound AI system phase, where we're seeing folks really approach the problem in a new way, and using these past methods of fine-tuning and of prompt packing and RAG, really as a way, as tools in this kind of larger framework of, hey, I'm going to build this system. And I think, if you look at our roadmap over the next couple of quarters, we're likely going to be sitting on, how is it that we can further accelerate this agent development for folks?
Sounds really, really good. It's really exciting right now. This is such a great time for those bits. So Craig, quick little personal question, where are you currently based? Where are you working with the Databricks?
I work out of our Seattle office. I having been at AWS for a number of years and having kind of founded SageMaker there, and then having been at Google for a number of years and having founded Vertex there, I was excited to come to kind of the company that brings data and AI together, because I really think that, we've seen kind of the benefits of the ML ops and how we can kind of improve the delivery and the kind of productionization of these models, but this opportunity of really combining the data plus the AI is one that I think is probably the next frontier of kind of differentiation and innovation along this space. And so up in Seattle, kind of in the home of some of those other folks, but always excited to get an opportunity to come down here and visit the mothership.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's been really great to be here, to feel the energy of San Francisco and have everybody coming here, whether they're coming from the Seattle area or coming from other parts of the country or from other countries.
All over the world.
What's her name? It's really the energy of this moment and everybody being able to do that has been such a great thing.
It is. I mean, I think the energy around this emerging technology. I think it's a technology that we all know is going to revolutionize the way all of us work. And I often think that we may well look back in our textbooks and think of the internet just as the training data set for these models, right? I mean, I think it could be a rounding error in that, we'll say, oh yeah, there were 20 or 30 years there where people were excited about that thing, but ultimately it was just the training data set. And so I'm excited to see, I think that energy here is really starting to try and figure out how can we steer this technology toward what we need it to be.
That's beautiful. That's a great idea, man.
All right then, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. I wish we had more time because I have so many more questions.
It was a great time. Have a great day.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, up next, we have an absolute titan of the open source world. We are so happy to announce that we have Vini Jaiswal, who is here with us today. Now, I'm sure there's a title card that's going up at the moment. Vini actually has many, many roles. So you're at the Linux Foundation. You also are working for TikTok for ByteDance at the moment as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes. All right, welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Thank you again for having me for live from the Lakehouse. Yeah, and this time I get to be with you two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exciting.
So open source, very hot, very topical today. You've been involved in it for quite a long time. Can you tell us how you got involved in open source?
Yeah, definitely. So I got involved out of problem I was trying to solve, which was not solvable with the resources I had in hand. So I was working, I got started during my master's project, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So during master's project, I was working on this logistic regression and trying to build a model, classifier, and how we can help solve like some of the statistical, using statistical analysis. So I needed a long data set, big data set, and I went to Kaggle and open source forums. That's how I got involved through that. But professionally, I started working in open source while I was working at Citibank, because I was doing a lot of implementation for data centers and our technologies there, and it was on Linux Foundation.
Yes.
Whenever there are bugs or like red flags, we always have to stay alert, because Citi is such a regulatory and financial company, so we have to make sure that everything is in compliant. So anytime we have a software bug or something, we have to solve it very critically in a very timely manner. And if I go to community for support, somebody is actively looking for, problems and what people are talking about. So that's how I got involved. And a few years later, Apache Spark came along. I was working on Hadoop and MapReduce, and I was trying to make our queries faster, models run faster, because we had so much data at Citi. And Apache Spark came to life as a rescue. MapReduce took forever to train our models, and our production applications, were just tied into dev. So while using Apache Spark, I saw tremendous success, and I did that for 2 years at Citi with Apache Spark. And eventually I wanted to build more use cases around Apache Spark, because I was just fascinated with technology. I became a contributor. And, fast forward at Databricks, I worked on four open source projects. Apache Spark being one, Delta Lake. I started from the very beginning. I was an evangelist, MLflow, and we also had Koalas, if you remember, Holly.
Yes, I do. Had a very cute logo, but I think it ended up going to Apache Spark, didn't it?
Yeah. So that's a little story.
Wow, that is an absolutely fantastic story. Now, obviously, open source has been very topical this week. Would you like me to start asking you about kind of Delta and Iceberg working together, or would you prefer I ask you about Unity Catalog?
Unity Catalog, sure.
Okay, let's talk about Unity Catalog.
Yes,
so, obviously, you've been quite close to this. How has this been for you?
Okay, there is a backstory behind this. I was just talking to Mate. So you all heard about the Unity Catalog announcement. Yesterday, Ali announced open sourcing, and today Mate talked deeper into open source and talking about Foundation. So the project got donated to the Linux Foundation, which I am a chair of. So I did a lot of work behind the scenes with Unity Catalog team. It was like the fastest open source and fastest donated project to a foundation. We were literally working hard behind the scenes, getting all the TAC members together, because we need voting done to be approved by foundation. So that's why I was super proud to have that released at the keynote stage, because behind the scenes, Unity Catalog team and Linux Foundation team, we have been working together. There's a lot of process and stuff, but we got it all nailed down. It was great.
It was very impressive.
Yeah. And also,
yes.
I became the first advocate for Unity Catalog, because on the call, while I was hosting the call and welcoming the project, I also pitched in, because we have seen this development from 3 years or more with our
it's a lot of
customers,
work.
right?
Yeah,
it's a lot of work. So the scale that Unity Catalog has already been running, I think that's impressive. And after open sourcing, I really feel the community will be very, very looking forward to it, because now we are solving all the silos and interoperability problem and all that.
Yeah. Something that's nice about taking something that has kind of been battle tested.
Yeah.
You know, it's not been battle tested obviously in every scenario because obviously we work in a Databricks context, but to take something that you know a lot of like the silly mistakes have already gone and it's like still very reliable to then kind of build it out and do other things is fantastic. But in terms of taking a project kind of and making it open source, can you tell people at home a little bit about, you know, how does one do that? How do you even start thinking about that? Like, what are the things that have to go into taking something closed and then making it open?
Yeah, you know, it's a very interesting story. For every open source project or every project, it's a different story about open sourcing. Some projects take less time, some projects take longer time, depending on the stage they are in. And that's why at the foundation, when a project comes in for open source donation, there are stages: sandbox level, incubation level, and then we graduate the project. As an open source project itself, there are a lot of things that you have to do. First, make sure that the code is, you know, black duck tested and all that stuff, security tested, because once, you know, vulnerability, if it is live, it can affect your open source project a lot. So I think some of the things that open source projects do is look for bugs, vulnerabilities, and actually solve a problem that is not solved. I think that's one of the key success metrics for an open source project. And Databricks, we have done that, right? We always start with customer use case or a user use case we are solving for. So I think a lot of motivation which comes around solving a problem for a customer or for a user, I think once you pick that, then you kind of like weave into, okay, now I'm going to solve this problem with this code or that code. What technology is out there? If it is not out there, how about you build it?
Yes.
Once you build it, if you see success, like have it tested by 1 or 2 users, like real users. Have their data put in to your technology so you can get it tested, it works, and then you can think about open sourcing it. So what goes into open sourcing is like thinking about license, thinking about governance, how are you going to manage the technical charter,
Yes.
for example. And then licensing itself is a very big thing, like which license are you going to pick? So there is like whole another like realm that comes after the fact once the project is being built. And then I think you start having involving community external to your project team itself. So
that was going to be my next big question. Obviously, you know, we've open sourced this thing, but it's nothing without a community who are there who want to contribute. I mean, for me, I've always seen it's kind of this barrier of like, oh, I'm not really that good enough to kind of like start contributing back. But how do people kind of overcome that, and how do people, you know, take their first step in open source?
Yeah, that's very good point, Holly, because I was leading the women's panel earlier this week, and a lot of people have been asking this question, how do we get started? I think you just, if you find a project or a use case that you really are like, you know, resonating with, start there. Like, what are the technologies running behind that specific thing? Like, for example, Uber, you use Uber, and what, you know, it takes you from one stop to another in a very, because technology has become very fast forward. So something like that, and see what is the technology around it. And then you are like kind of, you know, get into weaves. There are a lot of Slack channels available.
Yes.
So I would definitely recommend joining the community, because it allows you to, you know, overcome that initial barrier. You can kind of see like, you know, what community is talking about, what are the issues. If you don't like that, what conversations are going through, just, you know, join another project. And then once you are into it, start contributing by even answering questions to the Slack channel. Yesterday I had a brain date with somebody who wanted to, you know, discuss exactly this, like how I can help them. And I showed her, like, you know, maybe don't get intimidated, just, you know, get into the community. And then if you see some problem, download the software.
Yes.
Download it, test it, you know, use like a sample data set, run that, and put it out there. Like, I did this. And, you know, you don't have to have GitHub. You can put it on your social media too.
Yes.
Share it on LinkedIn. And yeah, that's how you can.
All right, then. That is absolutely wonderful advice. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for joining us. It's really wonderful. And we just wanted to say thank you, everyone. We're wrapped up here for now. And you know, just want to say thank you for coming out. We're here at the Lakehouse. We'll be back in the next segment later.